So, those of you who've been here for the last couple of weeks, anybody want to give me, or give everybody else here an update on what we've been talking about? Give me a theme. Give me an idea. What's that?
Idolatry of relationships.
Relationships. What about relationships?
The idolatry of them.
Idolizing relationships. Yeah. What relationships have we covered so far?
This is Jello.
Parents and teachers. Teachers can be lumped into authority figures in general. Yeah. So this is where we've been the last couple of weeks. We've got one more week of this, unless next week's one goes a little longer. But this is the premise that we've been working with. Sorry if I'm in the way. You guys are over there. The premise of idolizing relationships involves either a worship of the person, a worship of what we want the person to be, so we worship what they're not, and in so doing degrade the person, or by defining their worth by our own needs. So whatever relationship we've been talking about has fit into this rubric in some way. I tried to vary it a little bit, otherwise we could say like the exact same thing about every single relationship, and it would be very interesting. So that's where we've been. Last week we talked about teachers and authority figures. Our two main points were that we elevate their authority. We idolize teachers by elevating their authority over God's authority or over our parents' authority. Or the opposite of that, we challenge their authority. We put down their authority. We idolize who we want our teachers to be. That fan blade needs to go somewhere and stop being over my text. Yeah, I should like push it. But if I push it, then it'll come back in a worse way. So anyway, tonight we're going to move on. We're going to move out of relationships that are authority relationships over us. Your parents are over you. Your teachers are over you. You know, your coaches are over you. Whatever authority figure you want to put in that blank. Tonight we're going to move on. We're going to start talking about friends and peers. So the idolizing of friends and peers. And hopefully we're going to move really quickly through this because the last couple weeks I've been keeping you guys a little long. So hopefully we'll be quick here tonight. But number one right here, we become emotionally dependent on them. We idolize our friends and peers when we become emotionally dependent on them. Somebody tell me what I mean by emotionally dependent. What does that mean? Yeah, Judith.
Maybe like if you're not with them, you're like really upset.
Okay, yeah. So I'm absent from my friends and I'm miserable. Okay. What else might I mean by emotionally dependent?
You need them to dictate how you're supposed to feel. Like so if they're sad, you're sad. If they're happy, you're happy.
Okay. So there's a harmony of emotions there. Okay. Cool. Yeah.
You need them to make decisions.
Okay. You can't make a decision without their opinion. Cool. That's a good thought, Kyle. Other ideas? What's it mean to be emotionally dependent? Yeah.
Like their compliments make you feel worse.
Okay. Yeah. Their opinion of you means a lot to you. Yeah. Cool. Anything else? Yeah, Michael.
Trouble to you have to go to them and not find source of.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, that's good. Michael said that if you're in trouble, you have to go to them. You can't go to somebody else. Like they're the person you have to talk to. Yeah. These are all good things. My emotional stability is dependent upon that person, whether it's that I need them in a crisis, or I just I need them when I'm going through good times. I just need them with me all the time, or yeah, all these things you guys said. Their opinion of me really matters, and so it matters for the sake of popularity and self-worth. Popularity and self-worth. I was reading an article. Talks about how movies and television shows about adolescents and schools usually include a certain type of teenager who's frequently ridiculed and rejected by his or her peers. These adolescents are often portrayed as awkward, intelligent, shy, unattractive social outcasts with unfashionable hair, and dress styles. Everything that TV movies are about, right? High school TV movies, there's an outcast stereotype of these people. By the way, this article you can tell was written in 1993 because he goes on to say they're called nerds, dweebs, dorks, geeks, brainiacs, and computer jocks. Anybody offended by being called a computer jock? Are you offended by that? Is that offensive to you? Thanks for your honesty there. But here's the deal, right? Here's the deal. So that's like the movie or the TV portrayal of popularity, right? There's people inside the circle, there's people outside the circle. But you don't I think you guys would all agree that you don't have to fit one of those stereotypes to feel marginalized, right? Like you can feel unpopular whether you are what is it, a nerd or a dweeb, or whether you're, you can be an attractive, intelligent, well-adjusted person and still feel marginalized by the crowd, right? You don't have to fit a stereotype to bully or to be bullied. So if you were to look at me and think of me like in like first grade, kindergarten age, do you think that I would be one to bully or to be bullied? Be bullied. Thank you, Nick. That's what I was looking for. That's what I was wishing for. I have one memory. I only was in Christian school for kindergarten and first grade, and then I was homeschooled from the way on up. So homeschoolers represent. I bullied a kid in kindergarten, first grade.
Wow.
I did. I did, and I feel it's like one of those like things that sits in my conscience because I have no idea where this kid is. I like saw him in first grade and never again. So, but I had this really close friend when I was 6 and 7. His name was Brian Wooten, and Brian Wooten and I like to play action figures on this one tree in the playground because I had these really cool roots, and so they created like little caves and stuff for the action figures to like have their little bases and stuff. And so anyway, Brian Wooten and I would always team up and gang up on this other kid named Danny. And there was nothing wrong with Danny. Like he wasn't like this awkward kid or anything. But like,
That's right.
But like Brian, that's right. Not you, Dan. Sorry. It wasn't the name either. It's a good strong Christian name. Anyway, I'm gonna stick to that story. Brian and I ganged up on Danny because we didn't want Danny to play with us. So. And I say that because like I don't fit. I would argue like Nick said, I'm probably the one that looks like I'm gonna get bullied as opposed to being bullied. And Danny was totally not a weird kid or anything like that. Like he wasn't like this strange child that nobody wanted to be around. But I remember distinctly being mean to this kid and telling him we didn't want to play with him and all this stuff. And I still feel really guilty about that. And if I could look Danny up, I would. I don't even know what his last name is though, so that would be problematic. Can I just apologize to you, Dan? Would that work out if I just... I'm sorry I bullied your other persona in kindergarten before you were even born. Good. I hope Danny did too. So that's the point. You don't have to be a stereotype to feel this problem. You don't have to you don't have to fit a stereotype to feel like you're unpopular or popular. On the other side of that, you also don't have to be violently rejected to feel marginalized. Like sometimes people just ignore you, right? Like you just feel like you don't have any connections in the school. It's not that people are like telling you stay away from me, but you're just kind of like floating through school with not very many connections to other people around you, and that can feel like the same thing. And we can feel this need to be recognized. You can struggle with the need for popularity, whether you're on the outside looking in, like you're unpopular and you just see this crowd of people that you really want to be part of. Or you can be on the inside of that crowd and be popular and still be consumed with the fact that you need to be recognized by everybody, right? Whether you're on the inside of the circle, the outside of the circle, you can really struggle with needing popularity. Couple thoughts on that. Number one, and I'm preaching to the choir here. I know none of you guys struggle with popularity at all, but popularity is only as good as the crowd. Popularity is only as good as the crowd. So like. You supply something, I supply something to be recognized, like you've got a talent, or you're a really attractive person, or you've got a good sense of humor, you've just got a good persona. There's something about you that like the crowd noticed and they brought you in as one of their own, right? But really, what you supply is less important than the fact that the crowd is recognizing you. You see what I'm saying? Like, you gave something, but now it's all dependent on the crowd that you're part of. It's their recognition and their perception of you that really buoys your sense of self-worth. You're entirely dependent upon that. And really, popularity is fickle, right? You're at the crowd's mercy. Your identity is tied to them. Any of you guys watched House MD when it was on? Michael did. All right, there's some inappropriate stuff in there, so I don't recommend. But there was this one episode where there was a patient who, and I'm losing the disorder, but he basically was a blank slate. So he had no personality whatsoever. But then as soon as somebody came into the room, he would adopt the dominant personality and become just like them. So like if two people came into the room, he would automatically figure out which one was like the stronger personality and all of a sudden act like them. But it was like this disorder in his brain where he had no identity of his own. I feel like that's kind of the way this works, right? Like you have your you're a blank slate, you're trying to be recognized for who you are, then you become part of the crowd, and all of a sudden you've got to be what they are, or you're not part of the crowd anymore, right? I mean, that at least that's the way I would see it. And really, once you're in, you can't like decide that you don't like that stuff anymore, or you can't change your identity, because failure is unforgivable and what's popular changes. So you got to like roll with the punches. You got to be up to date on there. So popularity is fickle, but also popularity is so hive-minded. Like everybody's got to think like everybody else to be part of the clique. Individuality is second to like group mentality, and you can be so easily like kicked out of the circle if you're not part of the circle, or excuse me, not what the circle wants you to be anymore. And I feel like when it comes to what is valued by the popular crowd, the thing that is valued is really cheap. They eclipse what is actually important, which are like quality relationships, and they just care far more about being recognized than what really matters. So what is valuable is being replaced by what is cheap. So that's the first way. We are emotionally dependent on friends and peers, when we use them as our source of feeling of self-worth. I can't exist without my friends. I don't have any source of identity without my friends. And I say all that, and maybe we're trending philosophical, and let me pull back a little bit. I think the idea of popularity, the struggle that we all have, is really just connected to the fact that we all want to feel loved and appreciated, right? So even if you're not like a person who says, I want to be part of the in crowd, and I got to dress a certain way and think a certain way and watch a certain thing, I guarantee you probably still want to feel loved and appreciated, right? I mean, even if it's just by one person, you want to feel loved and appreciated. I want you guys to open your Bibles. I want to show you my favorite example of a person who who really feared people. Maybe he didn't want to be loved and appreciated in the same sense that we do, but he did want to be recognized as a good leader. So turn to 1 Samuel chapter 15. Anybody want to guess where we're going? 1 Samuel 15? I heard it. Who said it? Michael. Yeah, we're gonna look at King Saul. 1 Samuel 15. All right. Oh, I'm the Kings. That's why that didn't look right. 1 Samuel 15. There we go. So look with me at the beginning of chapter 15 here, verse 1. Samuel said to Saul, the Lord, that's a lot of S's. Samuel said to Saul, the Lord sent me to anoint you king over his people Israel. Now therefore listen to the words of the Lord. Thus says the Lord of hosts, I have noted what Amalek did to Israel in opposing them. Verse 3, now go and strike Amalek and devote to destruction all that they have. Do not spare them, but kill man, woman, and child, infant, ox, sheep, camel, and donkey. We can talk about that another time. But here's the deal. Amalek is a foreign power. They've oppressed Israel the entire time. Israel has been trying to regain the promised land that God promised them. And God is saying to Saul, finally go and eradicate this people once and for all, because they are nothing but a problem. They're a bad influence on you, and they're more than a bad influence on you. They're bringing pagan practices into your culture, and they're just an evil people. So let's read on. Jump down to verse 8 or verse 7. Saul defeated the Amalekites from Havilah as far as Shur, which is east of Egypt, and he took Agag, the king of the Amalekites. Agag's mother did not love him. He took Agag, the king of the Amalekites, alive, and devoted to destruction all the people with the edge of the sword. But Saul and the people spared Agag and the best of the sheep and of the oxen and of the fatted calves and the lambs and all that was good, and would not utterly destroy them. All that was despised and worthless, they devoted to destruction. What's the problem here? They didn't kill everything. Yeah. What else didn't they do? Like, they didn't kill all the people and all the sheep and everything, but they also, they didn't burn the city. They didn't destroy everything. They were supposed to eliminate everything entirely. So verse 10, the word of the Lord came to Samuel, I regret that I made Saul king, for he has turned back from following me and has not performed my commandments. Let's move down a little bit. So Samuel comes, we're going to move through this chapter really quickly. Samuel comes to meet Saul. He's upset because Saul has failed in his duty. Verse 13, Samuel came to Saul, and Saul said to him, Blessed be you to the Lord. I have performed the commandment of the Lord. He's very proud of himself. Samuel said, what then is this bleating of the sheep in my ears, and the lowing of the oxen that I hear? Saul said, they have brought them from the Amalekites, for the people spared the best of the sheep and of the oxen to sacrifice to the Lord your God, and the rest we have devoted to destruction. Then Samuel said to Saul, stop, I will tell you what the Lord has said to me this night. And he goes on to tell him, you haven't obeyed the voice of the Lord. Jump down to verse 21. Saul said, but the people took of the spoil, sheep and oxen, the best of the things devoted to destruction, to sacrifice to the Lord your God in Gilgal. And then Samuel has this great statement. He says, has the Lord as great delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as in obeying the voice of the Lord? Behold, to obey is better than sacrifice, and to listen than the fat of rams. Now, look down at verse 24. Saul's starting to realize this. He says, I have sinned, for I have transgressed the commandment of the Lord and your words, because I feared the people and obeyed their voice. Now therefore, please pardon my sin and return with me that I may worship the Lord. Here's the point. All right. Saul cared far more about his reputation and pleasing the people than he cared about fulfilling what the Lord had commanded him to do. He cared more about pleasing the people than he did about even taking spiritual responsibility out of the equation for a second. He cared more about pleasing the people than even fulfilling what a king should do. He wanted to give them what they wanted instead of completely destroying the enemy the way he should have. That's a much larger scale, considering popularity and reputation and things like that. It's a much larger scale, but it still stems from the same fact that Saul really just wanted to be appreciated for what he was doing. He wanted the people to recognize him as a good king, a personable king who cared about what they wanted and all this stuff. He feared the people, and in so doing forgot what was the most important. He idolized the people's estimation of him over what his responsibility was. So, by the way, I think there's a difference. We can make a difference between popularity and reputation. This is what Proverbs says. A good name is to be chosen rather than great riches, and favor is better than silver or gold. That seems like the opposite of what we're saying, right? Like you should value having a good reputation. Down to verse 3, the prudent sees danger and hides himself, but the simple go on and suffer for it. The reward for humility and fear of the Lord is riches and honor and life. Here's the point. Popularity is a pursuit. Reputation is a result. Okay? Popularity is a pursuit, but reputation is a result. Popularity is something that I'm craving and I'm constantly working for. Reputation is something that comes about because I do what I'm supposed to do. It's something that happens naturally. I think that's the point here. You want a good name. You want to be known as a good person who does the right thing. But that's something that you can't do if that's what you're consumed with. If you're just only thinking about how do people perceive me, then you're more concerned about popularity than you are reputation. Popularity is a pursuit, reputation is a result. So that's number one. We become emotionally dependent on them for popularity and self-worth. Number two, we become dependent upon them for role models. How can we play war, not peace, because there's too few role models? So, Calvin and Hobbes is my favorite. We have role models in our friends. So how many of you guys have a friend that you really, really look up to? For whatever reason. Okay, I've got some hands all over the place. We talked a little bit earlier about what we value in our friends. Anybody want to shout something out that you value in your friend? They give you food, okay, great. They feed you. Something you value in your friend. Give me something. The personality? Okay.
Someone who's not afraid to disagree with me.
Okay, great. I've got opinions. I want them to have opinions too. Cool. Something else. Shout it out.
Leadership and humility.
Leadership and humility. So that means that you got to be willing to follow them a little bit, right? Okay. Someone you can laugh with, sure. Yeah. I think really the things that we're drawn to common interests, like common skill sets, common pastimes. Like those are the things that attract us to people. Like friendships really kind of start because you like sports. I like sports too. You like Star Wars? Great. I love Star Wars. Let's be best friends forever. Friendships start with common interests, and we begin to respect people that are they're good at something. Steve and I have been friends for years now, and I respect Steve a lot for a lot of different reasons. Not the least of which is the fact that he's like guitar god over there with his pedals and his crazy fingers and all that kind of stuff. So like, I respect Steve for his abilities. I respect Steve for a number of other reasons as well. But when we become emotionally dependent upon a person as our role model, however, we're taking it a step a little farther, right? Mom says if Michael jumped off a bridge, would you do it too, right? Like, you're wrapped up in what that person is doing, and you got to like march to the beat of their drum, and that's the point where we cross the line from being, impressed with what they're able to do and like wanting to emulate them into like, I got to do exactly what they're doing because that's the only way to live, right? And really, the bottom line is that when we have a role model, we can respect them for their skill set, we can follow them, they can be smart, and that's all well and good, but really our role model should ultimately point us to Christ. Even Paul said, when he was talking to the Corinthians, he said, follow me as I follow Christ, right? Like, he wasn't saying, follow my spiritual methodology. He was saying, I'm imitating Christ, and if you want to learn more how to imitate Christ, you can do what I'm doing. He wasn't promoting his own spiritual methodology. He was saying, you should be like Christ the way I am being like Christ. Our identity is more tied up in Christ than being like somebody else. I love this. This is a quote actually from a book Alex and Gabe and a couple other guys and I are reading. This is Eugene Peterson. He says, Scripture is fairly sparing in the information that it gives on people, while it is lavish in what it tells us about God. It refuses to feed our lust for hero worship. It will not pander to our adolescent desire to join a fan club. The reason is because fan clubs encourage second-handed living. If we're absorbed in our role models, then we're not really concerned about what we're doing. We're concerned about what they're doing. So that's number 2. Popularity and self-worth are one way, and role models is another. Last one. We're dependent upon them for companionship. I think, Julia, were you saying that earlier? Like, you just can't live without them. Somebody over there said. Was that not you? Was that Judith? This thing was Judith.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah, that was exactly what I was thinking of, right? You're just like, I need to be around my friends. I'm so bored. I'm so lonely. I can't be around anybody else but my friends. I had this one retreat that I went on when I was like 13 or something. I remember like coming home and just being miserable because I was no longer around my friends anymore. Sad Justin. He just sat there and looked at the table. Man. Yeah, well, it probably was because I was probably a bully at that camp too. Yeah. No, I wasn't. I promise. That was my one bullying memory. I swear. It's not wrong to like desire to spend time with friends. Obviously, that would be silly for anyone to say that. I think it is wrong for us to mope that we can't be with our friends, though. You want to go out, hang out with your friends, and mom says, no, they can stay in tonight, and you're like, oh, mom, and you smash a stool like Gabe did the other week. It's wrong to elevate your desire to be with your friends over, the other responsibilities that you have, to be obedient to your parents, to be content in other things. Inability to function without something is to be addicted to it, right? You can't function without your friend, then you got to reevaluate the quality of that friendship, right? To be addicted to something is to be dependent on it. To be dependent upon something is to be controlled by it. And really to be controlled by something is to worship it, because you can't do anything without that thing. So those are our 3. This is my last point for tonight. The second way we do this is that we keep non-Christians as our closest friends. We elevate and idolize our friends and peers when we keep non-Christians as our closest friends. And like we'll just bear with me for a second. So it is necessary to have Christians as our closest friends. I would argue it is necessary for us to have Christians as our closest friends. And there's 2 reasons for that. The first one being that the relationship you have with a non-Christian is one way. It's one way. And this is what I mean by that. In 2 Corinthians, Paul says, therefore we are ambassadors for Christ, God making his appeal through us. We implore you on behalf of Christ, be reconciled to God. For our sake he made him to be sin who knew no sin, so that in him we might become the righteousness of God. Somebody tell me, what is the role of an ambassador? What does an ambassador do?
It's like someone who from a country goes and keeps the peace. Like
Yeah. Okay, anybody want to add to that? Somebody who goes to another country and keeps the peace?
They represent that country.
They represent the country, okay? Yeah. Yeah, I think the peacekeeping aspect of it is really important. And what do we know about our relationship to God before we were saved? It wasn't peaceful. What does the Bible describe us as? What does Romans say? We were dead in our trespasses and we were what to God? Enemies. Enemies of God. The world likes to say, I'm on good terms with God. I'm okay. They like to find an in-between somewhere. The Bible says that you're either for God or you're against God. You're either an enemy of God or you're a friend of God. The relationship you have with a non-Christian is spiritually one way. You are an ambassador for Christ to that person. That person needs to be reconciled to God still. And it's difficult to maintain a close relationship because, for those of us who are believers, like, our spirituality is integral to who we are. And so it's really difficult to maintain a close relationship with someone who's a non-Christian in that way because you're giving spiritually, there's no reciprocation spiritually speaking. The other reason is from this passage, right? And you guys know this one. Do not be unequally yoked with unbelievers. For what partnership has righteousness with lawlessness? What fellowship has light with darkness? What accord has Christ with Belial, to another name for Satan? What portion does a believer share with an unbeliever? What agreement has the temple of God with idols? Here's the point. Don't be unequally yoked. He's talking about an incompatibility, and this is what he's thinking of, right? This is a poor farmer who's trying to plow his field with a camel and a donkey. There's no equality in that yoking, and this is specifically an agricultural reference, so this is exactly what he's thinking of, although he's probably anticipating like two different oxen, not like a camel and a donkey. This is like unequally yoked to the extreme. But what's the problem here? Like, the camel's going to go one way, the donkey's going to go the other. They're going at different paces. The camel's going to want to stop at some point, and maybe the donkey does too, because donkeys are really stubborn, right? This isn't going to work out so well. And the idea is that when you have two different things yoked together that are supposed to be accomplishing the same purpose, they pull different ways. They go at different paces. There's no harmony in the way that they're working together. I like to think of unequally yoked this way, right? Can't date you because we're unequally yoked. Get it?
I get it.
Get it? Thanks. Unequally yoked. Fun with homonyms. Anyway, these are some things though, right? These are things that are incompatible. You've got puzzle pieces and you can kind of like force them together, but there's still a space, although it looks like you could flip that one over on the other side that would fit. And that's kind of bugging me. But anyway, it's incompatible. Even though you can force it in there, it doesn't quite fit. Same thing with the plug here. You're not going to be able to plug that into that old socket when it's got that grounding pin. And oil and water, like you mix that as much as you want, and eventually that is still going to separate, and the oil is going to sit on top, right? So these are things that are incompatible. How can your closest friends, the people that you are most closely associated with, be people who are spiritually opposite of you, right? So these are things that are incompatible, but I actually want to illustrate this a different way. So I need two volunteers. Two volunteers. Two guys. Ryan and Nick, let's go. This is how I want to illustrate unequally yoked tonight. Alright? So let's clear the way here a little bit. Clear the way. I put this down, I should have it up here. Alright. So you take I'm gonna untangle this a little bit here. I guess it doesn't have to be fully undone. For the illustration to work. I think I can yell at your dad for winding this up too. Take that end, and you get, this end. Alright? Take as much as you'd like. Wind it up, because you guys are going to have a tug of war, okay? Alright? So I'm going to be in the middle, and we're going to see who's going to win here. Try not to smash people with things. If you want a little more, I can take a little more. Brian's got plenty of slack over here. Alright? So, on the count of 3, these guys are going to have a tug of war, okay?
Let's not trip.
If you can dive into people, that would be fantastic. No, I'm just kidding. I'll do that. On the count of 3, and the person, I guess I'm not really going to do it here. The person who gets past me is the winner, okay?
Wait,
Past me. Other way, yeah. There. Thank you for keeping me straight on the rules. On the rules of tug of war, thank you. 1, 2, 3, go.
Michael, get ready.
I'll catch you.
Are you leaning on something, Nick?
Nick, grab the thing at the end.
Okay.
We need a shorter rope, I think. You guys are like, there you go. I think it did get longer.
Michael, you
Come on, Nick.
Go, Ryan.
All right. There we go. Okay, we have a winner. Jeez, that's quite all right. I was not prepared for you to do that. All right, so let's try this again now. Okay, so let's get Kyle. You want to come over here help Nick? Michael, you want to help Ryan? We're gonna put a couple more bodies on this. All right. All right. So let's try this one more time, okay? The count of 3. 1, 2, 3, go! You were so close. Okay, I think that was it. All right. Give him a round of applause. Ryan and Nick, stay where you are. I need you to hold this for me 1 second. Hold this for me. Nick, did you lose all the time? I'm sorry. Here's what I want you guys to see, okay? Here's what I want you guys to see. When you are unequally yoked with somebody, and we're not talking about dating right now, we're just talking about friendships, this is exactly what your relationship spiritually will look like, okay? But I want you to think about it this way, too. This is not the Christian, and this is not the unchristian, okay? These are their responsibilities, and this is you, okay? This is you because the Christian's priorities are pulling in a different direction. The non-Christian's priorities are pulling in the opposite direction. And it's not a contest, right? Like most friendships that you have, it's not like somebody's like trying to prove you wrong all the time. Like you probably aren't going to be really close friends with somebody who's just arguing with you all the time. But there's a subtlety to the fact that what they want and what you want, at least spiritually speaking, are in two different directions. And you're in the middle. You know, ultimately, you're you know what happens when a rope gets pulled too many times, right? Eventually falls apart. So thank you guys, thank you. That's the deal, right? We're unequally yoked. We are idolizing our relationships with our friends when we are keeping non-Christians as our closest friends, and our relationships get pulled apart as a result of that. And biblical fellowship, like the kind of relationship that you share with a Christian, is not just like this casual friendship, right? You've got Christian friends who support you spiritually as well as in your interests and things like that. So it is necessary to keep Christians as our closest friends, and it's on the flip side of that though, it is where I have my clicker. So it's necessary to have Christians as our closest friends. However, it is necessary to have non-Christian friends, right? And by the way, this is not like some high-minded, like, you are so much better than your non-Christian friend, like, don't associate with non-Christians. That's totally not at all what I'm trying to say here. Because it is necessary to have non-Christian friends. What is the purpose of being a Christian? What is the purpose of being a Christian? We can sum it up in 2 things. What are they? To be an ambassador for Christ is one. What's the other one? Glorifying God and enjoying Him forever, as the Creed says. The purpose of Christian living is to glorify and enjoy God and to magnify Him so that others can see. And we are failing to do the other side of that, to magnify Him so others can see, if we have no Christian friends, or no non-Christian friends, excuse me. If you have no outreach, you're ignoring Jesus' very first command of the church, which was to go and make disciples of all people. So there is an aspect that I want you guys to recognize, that don't shun people because they're not Christians. That is absolutely not what Christ wants you to do. However, we do need to be careful that our non-Christian friends are not our closest confidants, like the people that we spend all of our time with. Because ultimately, their influence on us is going to be a little more powerful probably than our influence is going to be on them. Darkness is as influential as light, and the problem is that darkness is really subversive. Like it creeps in. You don't recognize it when it's coming in. And again, your friend is probably not trying to corrupt you, right? Your non-Christian friend is not sitting there saying, how can I destroy their spiritual integrity? But because you're friends with them and you're friendly, like, you're just gonna be in contact with them. Their priorities are gonna rub off on you a little bit, and you just get comfortable in that relationship, and finally, you can start to see your spiritual priorities start to disappear. So, it's necessary to have Christians as our closest friends, but it is necessary to have non-Christian friends. I'm going to give you guys a sneak peek. This is where we're going to be next week. We prioritize friends of the opposite sex. Prioritize friends of the opposite sex. We're going to talk about this next week. We practice idolatry when we have friends of the opposite sex as our closest friends. And I know that's like going to rub some of you guys the wrong way. You guys have close friends of the opposite sex, and we'll get into that next week. So. Listen, even if you are dating, it is necessary to have same-sex friends as your closest friends. That make sense? You guys with me? We'll unpack that next week when we pray, and I'm going to let you guys go, all right?